I've often wondered what it might feel like to be seen, truly seen, by the people who were supposed to know me best. My parents, Melissa and Bob, always seemed to have their eyes trained on my younger brother, Timothy. He was the golden child, the intellectual prodigy who excelled at everything deemed important in our household. Recitals, drama performances, debate competitions. Timothy shone in all of them, and my parents were always front and center, applauding like their lives depended on it. And then there was me, Elliot Brown, the athlete, the fighter. My world revolved around judo mats and boxing rings, sweat and grit. I lived for the rush of a match, the moment when it was just me and my opponent, no room for distractions or doubts. But no matter how many trophies I brought home, how many medals I hung on the wall, my parents never seemed to notice. Not once did they come to watch me compete. Not for the district championships, not for state finals, not even when I made nationals. While Timothy's stage performances were adorned with flowers and standing ovations, my victories were celebrated in the echoing silence of an empty auditorium, or worse, in my own mind. The only constant in my corner was Coach Joe. He wasn't just my coach. He was the father I wished I had. Joe believed in me when no one else did. He'd sit me down after every match, win or lose, and tell me what I'd done right, what I could improve on. He'd remind me that strength wasn't just about physical power. It was about resilience, about standing tall even when the world seemed determined to push you down. I'll never forget the time I qualified for the regional finals in judo. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. But when I told my parents, their response was a dismissive, "That's nice, dear. When's Timothy's next recital again?" It was like a slap in the face. I stopped telling them about my matches after that. What was the point? At home, Timothy basked in their attention, his achievements displayed like sacred artifacts. My accolades, on the other hand, were crammed into a corner of my room, collecting dust. I didn't resent Timothy. How could I? It wasn't his fault that our parents saw him as the epitome of success. But there were moments, late at night, when the unfairness of it all hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I often wonder if my parents even know who I am. Do they know how many hours I've spent training, how many punches I've thrown, how many times I've picked myself up off the mat after being knocked down? Do they care? Or am I just the other son, the one who never quite fit into their picture of a perfect family? I've learned to stop seeking their approval. Instead, I channel all my energy into my sport, into proving to myself that I'm enough. Joe taught me that validation doesn't have to come from others, it can come from within. And so, I fight. Not for them, not for the applause or the recognition, but for me. Because in the ring, I'm not just Elliot, the overlooked son. I'm Elliot Brown, the fighter, the champion, the man who refuses to be invisible. Going to university was a fresh start for me, an escape from the suffocating shadow of being the other son. My sports achievements had earned me a spot. Not my grades, not my parents' money, just my own blood, sweat, and persistence. Meanwhile, Tim waltzed into a prestigious school with our parents footing the bill, proud to invest in their golden boy's future. I left home without a backward glance, barely returning even during holidays. Mom would call occasionally, but I always found an excuse: practice, training, a project, anything to avoid going back to that house where I felt like an outsider. At university, I found something, or rather, someone, who changed everything. Liala. The moment I met her, it was like the world clicked into place. She was warm, intelligent, and she saw me in a way no one else ever had. We bonded over late-night talks, shared dreams, and the quiet understanding that comes from being seen for who you truly are. It wasn't long before we were inseparable. Liala was the first person to believe in me, not because of what I'd achieved, but because of who I was. When she told me she wanted to marry me, I couldn't believe it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a future worth looking forward to, a family of my own that I could build with someone who truly cared about me. Meeting her parents only solidified that feeling. They were warm, welcoming, and seemed to genuinely like me. But when the topic of introducing her to my family came up, I froze. I didn't want Liala to meet them. How could I explain the coldness, the distance, the way my parents had always made me feel like I wasn't enough? I didn't want her to see that part of my life, the part that had shaped so much of my self-doubt. But Liala was insistent, gently pushing me to bridge the gap. She believed in family, in connections, in giving people a chance. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Bringing her home felt like walking into enemy territory. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel like home. It never had. My parents were polite when they met Liala, their smiles practiced and formal. Timothy, of course, stole the spotlight effortlessly. He charmed her with his wit and intelligence, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of resentment. The dinner was tense for me. I watched as my parents showered Timothy with their usual attention, asking about his studies, his plans, his life. When it came to me, their questions were perfunctory, almost as if they were asking out of obligation. Thanksgiving was supposed to be just another chore. When Mom called and insisted I come home, I agreed out of some lingering sense of obligation. I wasn't excited about it, but I didn't want to deal with her nagging. Besides, I figured I could get through one awkward dinner and be done with it. When I arrived, the house felt as it always did, like a place I didn't belong. My parents were already at the dinner table, sipping wine and looking far too cheerful. Mom was practically glowing when she announced, "Timothy's bringing his fiancée tonight." Fiancée? That threw me for a loop. I hadn't even known Timothy was dating anyone seriously. But then again, why would I? I'd stopped caring about his life years ago. Still, I sat there, trying to muster some interest, some shred of politeness. And then they walked in. The moment I saw her, my heart stopped. Liala. She was on Timothy's arm, her smile radiant as she flashed a diamond ring to my parents. They gasped with delight, rushing to embrace her like she was some long-lost daughter. I couldn't breathe. My world narrowed to that one horrifying moment, the sound of their laughter echoing in my ears as if it were mocking me. Liala turned to look at me, and her smile faltered. Her eyes met mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw regret, or maybe it was guilt. Whatever it wasn't enough. I sat there in stunned silence, my mind racing but unable to form a single coherent thought. Mom, oblivious as always, turned to me with a smile and said, "Say something, Elliot. Aren't you happy for them?" Happy? That word felt like poison. It churned in my stomach, mixing with the humiliation and rage boiling inside me. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms. All I could say, because it was all I felt in that moment, was, "I hope you all die in a house fire." The words came out cold and sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. The smiles vanished. My parents stared at me, stunned. Liala's face turned pale. Timothy just stood there, his arms still around her, as if he didn't quite understand what had just happened. I didn't wait for their responses. I pushed back my chair, the screech of wood against the floor ringing in the silence, and walked out the door. As I drove away, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I couldn't tell if I was angrier at Liala for betraying me, Timothy for taking what little happiness I'd found, or myself for ever believing I deserved better. Thanksgiving was ruined, but so was everything else. My family, my past, my future. It all felt like it had crumbled in an instant. And for the first time, I didn't care if I ever saw any of them again. When I left that house on Thanksgiving, I knew I was done. Done with the betrayal, the lies, and the constant reminders that I never mattered to them. The people who were supposed to love and support me had crossed the final line, and there was no coming back from it. My parents, who knew Layla was my girlfriend, were overjoyed to welcome her as Timothy's fiancée. The woman I had loved, the one I'd thought wanted a future with me, had cheated on me with my own brother, and not just cheated, but flaunted it in front of me. If that wasn't a loud and clear message that I didn't belong in their lives, I didn't know what was. But you know what? They deserved each other. My brother, who always had to take what was mine, and Layla, who betrayed me so effortlessly. Let them have their perfect little life together. I didn't want any part of it. I blocked all four of them, my parents, Timothy, and Layla, from my phone that same night. I erased their numbers, deleted every old message, and removed every trace of them from my life. At university, I made it clear. I wouldn't acknowledge Layla. She tried a couple of times, calling my name, trying to catch up to me. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a glance. She had made her choice, and I wanted nothing to do with her. For a while, I thought about teaching Timothy a lesson, showing him that he couldn't always take what he wanted and get away with it. But every time I thought about it, I saw the bigger picture. He wasn't worth it. They weren't worth it. No way was I going to risk my future, or my freedom, just to settle a score with someone as petty as him. Some family members reached out after a while, wondering why I wasn't showing up at holidays or other events. I told them the truth. I don't belong there. Simple, direct, and final. Most of them didn't press me further. Maybe they knew. Maybe they didn't. I didn't care enough to explain. Cutting them all out of my life was like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. The weight lifted. Life wasn't perfect, but it was better, cleaner, quieter. I focused on my training, my studies, and the people who truly cared about me. Sometimes, cutting out toxic people isn't just a choice, it's survival. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally live. After that chapter of my life closed, I decided I was done with bonds, love, and all the mess that came with them. Trust was a fragile thing, and I wasn't going to let anyone shatter it again. So, I threw myself into what I could control: my studies, my training, and my future. Sports were still my passion, but I knew early on I wasn't going to be the next big name in boxing or judo. And that was okay. The discipline I'd learned through years of training pushed me through university and into a solid career. When I landed a job at a major automobile manufacturer, I felt like I'd found my place. The work was challenging but rewarding. It gave me purpose, structure, and something to focus on beyond the ghosts of my past. My life settled into a rhythm, one that I controlled. I'd wake up early, hit the gym, and push my body to its limits. Then it was off to the office, where I threw myself into my work, always striving to be better than I was yesterday. Evenings were my time to unwind. Most nights, I'd head to the club, grab a cold beer, and watch whatever boxing match was on TV. Seeing fighters in the ring always reignited that spark in me, reminding me of who I was and what I loved. Home was quiet, and I liked it that way. No drama, no distractions, just me and my space. I'd fall asleep, wake up, and do it all over again. Some people might call that boring, but to me, it was peace. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my life, unburdened by anyone else's expectations or betrayals. Sure, there were moments when I'd see a couple holding hands or hear a coworker talk about their family, and a flicker of something, regret, maybe, would creep in, but I'd quickly push it aside. Love had been nothing but a weapon in my life, wielded to hurt and manipulate. I didn't need it. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every step, every decision, every routine was on my terms. And for now, that was enough. It started with a call. My mother called me. It felt like a ghost from a past I'd long buried. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was the same. Calm but with that unmistakable edge of authority she always used when she wanted something. Elliot, you need to come home. There's an emergency. You have to come. The words hit me like a stone wall. How had she even gotten my number? I didn't ask. I didn't care. I just hung up without a word. Whatever emergency they had going on, it wasn't my problem anymore. But then, a few minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Coach Joe. Joe was the only person who'd ever felt like family to me, the only one who'd seen me for who I was and stood by me. I couldn't ignore his call. When I answered, his tone was softer than usual, almost pleading. Elliot, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I need you to come home. It's important. I knew right away my parents had put him up to this. They must have known he was the only person I'd even consider listening to. A part of me wanted to tell him no, to hang up and block his number too. But it was Joe, the man who'd been there for every match, every win, every loss. Fine, I said, my voice clipped. The drive home felt like stepping back into a life I'd spent years trying to escape. Memories flooded my mind. Sitting in the back seat as a kid, my parents barely acknowledging me while they praised Timothy for some meaningless achievement. Every mile felt heavier, as if the closer I got to that house, the more I could feel the weight of their indifference, their betrayal. I didn't know what kind of emergency was waiting for me, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever it wasn't for me. I wasn't coming back for them. I was coming back because Joe asked me to. For him, and only him. Walking into that house felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone was reading from a bad script. My dad opened the door, and there he was, all smiles, trying to act like we were just one big happy family. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands clasped like she was praying. The whole thing reeked of desperation. I didn't bother with pleasantries. Cut the fake drama and get to the point, I said, crossing my arms. They exchanged a glance, the kind that said they were gearing up for something big. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling. Elliot, it's Timothy. He has cancer. The words hung in the air, but they didn't hit me the way they probably hoped they would. I just stood there, unmoved. My father jumped in, trying to close the deal. We need your help. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and you're the only match. I raised an eyebrow. Why not you? Or Mom? My mother's face crumpled, and she said softly, we're not a match. Timothy has a rare blood type. Yours. I let that sink in for a moment, then pushed my chair back and stood. Your problem, I said flatly. You deal with it. I'm out. I turned and walked out of that house without looking back, leaving them sitting there in their manufactured little moment of grief. As far as I was concerned, their golden boy could have their golden sympathy. I wasn't part of their world anymore, and I wasn't about to let them drag me back in. Not even for this. As I reached the door, I felt my father's hand grab my arm. I turned to see him on his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Elliot, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "He's your brother. We need you." For a split second, I froze. Not because of his words, but because I'd never seen him like this, desperate, vulnerable. It might have made a difference once, but not now. I pulled my arm free and stepped toward the door. Then my mother's voice rang out, sharp and venomous. "You're so selfish. After everything, you're just going to walk away? You've always been like this, Elliot. Always thinking only about yourself." I stopped in my tracks, her words hitting me not because they hurt, but because they were so absurd. I turned back slowly, locking eyes with her, and I saw it. The same cold judgment she'd always reserved for me. But this time, I wasn't a kid anymore. This time, I had something to say. "All my life," I began, my voice steady but laced with years of pain, "you two treated me like shit. Tell me, Mom, how many championships have I won? Can you even name one? Tell me, who filled out my university admission papers? Oh, that's right, it was me. Who paid for my studies? Me again. And tell me, how many times did you even think about me after you were done throwing your money and praise at Timothy?" I stepped closer, my eyes boring into hers. "Even today, when you finally picked up the phone to call me, it wasn't for me. It was for him. Your only son, right? Not for the one you gave birth to and left to rot. Well, here I am, Mom, your rotten son, standing right in front of you." She stared at me, speechless, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to form a response but couldn't find the words. "You made me this way," I said, my voice rising. "You made me someone who doesn't care, someone who doesn't need you, someone who doesn't owe you a damn thing. So deal with it." I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. For the first time in years, I felt free, not because I was leaving, but because I'd finally said what needed to be said. They wanted me to save Timothy, but they never realized I wasn't their son anymore. Not really. They killed that bond a long time ago. That evening, the phone rang again. This time, it was Joe. His voice was somber, heavy with the weight of what he had to say. "Elliot," he began, pausing like he wasn't sure how to tell me, "Timothy's gone. He passed away earlier today." I sat there in silence, staring at the wall. The words didn't hit me like they might have if we'd been close, or if I'd felt anything for him in years. Instead, it was just empty. "They were too late to call you," Joe added, his voice quieter now. I could sense he was testing the waters, seeing if I'd break. But I didn't. "Okay," I said simply and hung up. I didn't ask about Layla. I didn't need to. I could guess she wasn't there. Timothy had become useless to her the moment he couldn't offer her the life she wanted. And in some twisted way, that didn't surprise me. It was only weeks later that an old university friend reached out, sharing news I hadn't expected. Layla was dead. A car crash. She'd been partying, high on narcotics, when it happened. The girl who once spoke about a future together, who betrayed me without a second thought, had destroyed herself. Life has a way of tying up its loose ends, I guess. My parents, on the other hand, seemed determined to untangle theirs. They started calling me every week. I didn't answer. They'd already used up their second, third, and fourth chances years ago. Some extended family reached out too, with all the usual lines. "They're trying to make it up to you, or they've changed." I wasn't buying it. I told them exactly what I thought. The only reason they're calling is because I'm all they have left. If Timothy were alive, I wouldn't even exist in their world. So spare me the guilt trip. Joe, ever the steady presence in my life, suggested I start therapy. At first, I brushed him off, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized he might be right. I'd spent so many years building walls that I didn't know how to tear them down, even for myself. So, I started therapy. Slowly, hesitantly. It's not easy, facing everything you've tried to bury. But I'm trying. For the first time in a long time, I'm trying to mend the broken pieces of my emotional life. I don't know where this path will lead, but for now, I'm walking it. And for the first time in years, I feel like maybe, just maybe, it will turn out fine. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.